Okay, friends, it is time to finally do the frequently asked questions video that I said I was going to do like a month ago in honor of my 1,000 subs on YouTube. Basically, we'll just play a game of 20 questions, except that it's not quite 20 questions. I've kind of picked and chosen, curated some questions that I receive a lot, and a couple specific questions from some of you guys. We're going to run through those and I'm going to do my best to answer them. I don't remember them, so of course I gotta use my handy dandy iPad. I feel like Steve on Blue's Clues. Here's the mail, it never fails, it makes me wanna wag my tail. Meow. So here we go. Almost 20 questions. Starting with, where are you from? Where am I from? Well, this is a good question because there's not really an answer. I was born in Ohio, in the great city of Canton, where they have the Football Hall of Fame. Still have family there in Canton and Akron. Also home of the one and only LeBron James. But basically, in part, I grew up in the Cleveland area, home of the Christmas Story house, where they filmed Christmas Story. That's why they call it Cleveland Street. Fun fact for you. And then also bounced around the South, and but generally, I say that I am from Jacksonville, Florida, or St. Augustine, Florida, since that's where I went to school and did the things. Next question, where do you live? I live in Orlando, Florida. That's a very, very simple question to answer. Yes! So yeah, I live in Orlando, home of the Big Mouse, and more appropriate to me geographically is Universal Studios. Next question, we have, what is your music education? I would say I've had a pretty good music education. I started taking piano lessons when I was around 5 or 6, I think. Maybe I started later, but I've been playing since I was 5, and then they finally decided to get me lessons somewhere in that age. I don't know. And I started taking voice lessons, I think in the 1st grade, maybe the 2nd grade. Basically, I just did that for the entirety of my childhood. Piano and voice lessons up through, we'll say, early middle school. And then, as most middle schoolers do, whatever it was that they were interested in before, they just kinda, forget about it and decide to do new things. So in middle school, I stopped taking piano lessons, but I then started really getting into voice lessons. I did choir all through this. I was in chorus from probably 3rd grade all the way up through high school. In middle school, I got into musical theater, and then when I got to high school, I really kind of exploded with the music stuff. All of this, by the way, I had already been taking dance. I was a dancer. Almost first and foremost, I was a dancer. I basically lived at the dance studio. I was one of those kids. But then when I got to high school, I stopped doing the studio dance and I really started doing show choir and women's choir, a cappella choir. And then it all kind of came to a standstill when I discovered color guard. For those of you that don't know what color guard is, I could enlighten you and go on for hours about this, but think of the marching band that you saw at the football game in high school, and think of the girls and the boys with the flags and the rifles and the swords, which we of course call sabers. So I got into that when I was in, early high school, I think my sophomore year. I was actually in the jazz band first, and then kind of found a flag in a closet, and long story short, the rest was history, and I became a band person. I didn't do choir, I think, after that year, and I just did band. And by the end of my senior year, I was doing percussion with the symphonic band and the concert band, and it totally turned everything around. I was doing drum corps pretty much all of high school, which again, if you don't know what color guard is, you probably don't know what drum corps is. And then I graduated and went to college and went to school at University of North Florida. Go Ospreys! Swoop, swoop, swoop. And I had a really great music education there. I started as a vocal jazz major, then things kind of got shaken up by some personal stuff that happened that year, as well as things that happened at the university itself. And so I kind of had to switch to something else. And so I went back to piano, and I was a classical piano major for longer than I should have been. Way longer than I should have been. Discovered that I didn't want to be a classical pianist. Did a lot of soul searching that year, and discovered that percussion was actually like my love. My love of music all kind of comes back to percussion. Luckily, there was a fabulous percussion professor there who was also the principal percussionist for the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. And I believe she's also the first female principal percussionist in the country. She can correct me on that, but that's something that's always been in my head as like a factoid about her. And her name was Charlotte Mabry. Still is Charlotte Mabry. She didn't change her name. And she was incredibly valuable to broadening my music education experience, really showing me what was possible when you step outside of the box that we tend to get put in when it comes to music, especially classical music. So yeah, I graduated with a degree in performance and went about my merry way. That's basically been my music education. Other than that, I'm self-taught on a handful of instruments. Moving along. Oh, well, perfect. How many instruments do you play? I don't know a number. Part of the thing with percussion is that you play like a million instruments. So it's a hard thing to kind of pinpoint how many. It's hard to quantify. So I will list the instruments that I consider myself proficient and or fluent on. Obviously the piano and the ukulele, guitar, scratch that, I'm not counting guitar, marimba, vibraphone, glockenspiel, tambourine, triangle, I don't know, bass drum, timpani. I don't know how many more to list because I could literally list so many things in percussion, which is why a lot of my multi-covers have so many percussion instruments, because that's my background. And it's why I beat the crap out of my ukulele as opposed to like playing it like a normal person. I just strum and chuck until it is beaten into submission. There are some other instruments that I have dabbled in and could claim proficiency, I think, if I sat with it long enough, like the flute. I would love to get the guitar back on the other list, but I'm just a total wuss. I don't like it when my fingers hurt from the strings. I feel like there's an instrument that I am forgetting, and that instrument's going to be very upset with me somehow. Anyways, we're gonna have to move on because I can't remember anything. Next question. How long have you played the ukulele? I have played the ukulele for a little over 2 years, which in the span of my life feels like nothing, and yet because it has pretty much been all-consuming for the last 2 years, also feels like a very large chunk of my life. I started playing because I wanted to be able to teach it to my students in the following school year, so I just randomly went down to my local music store and got myself a ukulele and decided to teach myself how to play it in hopes that I would teach it to the kids. And then I just never taught it to the kids. It was more for me than it was for them, but that was also in part that we didn't have any at the school. And so this past year, I made a real effort at getting ukuleles for them, and that was successful, and I was able to teach them how to play ukulele, and it was so much fun, so empowering and inspiring to watch them learn how to play an actual instrument. And not just any instrument, an instrument that I find so much joy in myself. Yeah, the answer to that question is a little over 2 years. Okie dokie, moving along. Oh, well, the next question was, why ukulele? And I kind of answered that one in the last question. So we're gonna move ahead. What kind of ukulele do you play? Okay, I get this question a lot in my videos, and I just so happen to have my friend right here. So this is the ukulele that you see in pretty much all of my videos, and it is a Kala. It's a concert size. I opted for the concert because I got big old man hands, and there was no way that I was going to consistently put them around the neck of a soprano and find any joy in that. And actually be willing to come back to it day after day. So I decided to go with the concert size, and this is actually, so this is Kala, K-A-C-E. I assume that means concert. And it's got the EQ stuff in there so that I can plug in, and I will probably do a full review of this at some later point, but yes, I play Kala. For the most part, it's in all of my videos because it's like home. I don't know if it's particularly wonderful as a ukulele. I don't think I've tried enough ukuleles to claim that, but it's like a person to me now, so that's why I play it in pretty much all of my videos. Sometimes I practice with the other ones, and then when I sit down to do the video, I find myself with this in my hands because it's my comfort zone. Next, how often do you practice? That's a really good question, and it changes depending on the time of year. So when I started, I don't think I put the ukulele down. I would say I practiced more hours than I did anything else during the day. But on the whole, since those first couple months where I was kind of acquainting myself with the ukulele, I would say on the daily, like during the work week, I usually practice around 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time I have and what time of year it is. If it's towards the end of the semester when I've got musicals going on and concerts and all kinds of things happening at school, it's probably less than 30 minutes if I'm lucky. But I do try to pick it up every single day, even if that's just in my classroom, in between classes, and I just strum out a song just to have my fingers on the strings. That counts for me as putting my hands on the uke and playing a song. Other days, like this summer, I have played so much more ukulele than I played in the last couple of months, and it has been like a breath of fresh air in my life. I've probably played, I would say, around 3 to 4 hours a day. I have been working on picking and things that I don't normally work on during the school year because I don't seem to have the stamina or the willpower to bring myself to practice things that I suck at and I don't like practicing. So I made a real effort this summer to make sure that I was digging into the stuff that I'm not good at, which is picking, being the big one. So that's the answer to the practice question. Okie dokie. What was your dream job as a child? That's another one that changed throughout time, but I would say there were 2 main jobs that I really, really wanted. I was a big music nerd. I mean, through and through. So from probably about age 9, we'll say 9, up and through college, we're gonna say college. Really all I wanted to be was a film composer, which is, I know, one of the dorkiest things that a kid could want to be. I lived and breathed music scores as a kid. I didn't really own a ton of pop music and stuff like that. My parents are big into film, and so I grew up watching a lot of the classics and a lot of independent films and foreign films, and they all had really, really fantastic music. And so when I had money to buy CDs, I was buying scores and I was buying soundtracks. All I wanted was to be the person that created the emotion and the feeling for movies. To a certain degree, I did get to live this out. I got to study composition in college, and I actually did score a short film when I was in high school, and part of that was realized, and it's still something that I would like to work on, and it's still something that I absolutely geek out over. So if you are a fan of film composers, put some love down in the comments so that I don't feel quite so much like I'm flying the freak flag. Ow! I hit my funny bone so hard. I can't feel my pinky. Oh my god, that hurts so bad. Is my face purple? It feels like it's fuchsia. Oh my god. Do I still have an elbow? Is it still there? I wonder if it's possible to hit your funny bone permanently. You know what I mean? You hit it so hard that you just never feel anything ever again on the underside of your arm. Ow! Okay, we're gonna have to move on. I'll just keep whining. Oh, the second part of that answer, I forgot. We'll say two parts. We'll say there's two other parts. In general, since I was, we'll say 4 years old, I've wanted to be a performer. I love being on stage. I love performing music, even if it's with a choir, if it's by myself, if it's in a musical, if it's dancing, if it's aerial silks, if it's anything. It's one of the few things that is completely indescribable. Like, the real truth of it is so indescribable until you do it. And so, since I was a kid, I would say being able to do that for a living is like the ultimate thing I would imagine I could ever do. And I did do this for a long time before I was a teacher. I pursued a performance career. So yeah, there just comes a time when you have to, pay rent and feed your cats. And so you develop new dreams. Okay, we're gonna move on now. When did you decide you wanted to teach? But did I decide that? That's the question. There came a point in, 4 years ago? Something like that. Around 4 years ago when I was working a day job that I really didn't like. And so I decided that I was either going to go back to performing or I was going to really settle down into becoming a full-time public school teacher. Whichever one came first is the one that I was going to go with. So I started doing auditions and I started working on my teacher certification, and bingo, bango, bongo, I got a teaching job before I got a performing job. So here I am. I'm really, really happy with the way that chapter of my life kind of unfolded. I love teaching, and it has been incredibly empowering. And the past couple years have been very, very eye-opening, a lot of fun, but more work than I think anyone has any idea goes into a job that doesn't pay nearly as much as it should at a base level, let alone what is required to do the certification while you do it. And so that decision is ongoing. I think that that's one of the things with teaching, is that decision to be a teacher almost feels like a daily decision. You have to wake up every morning and decide to be a teacher because it takes so much out of you, and there's so much that's required beyond the teaching. But we'll say the answer to this question is every day. Every day I decide to be a teacher. Okay, doc. What else? I got strings and hairs all over the place. Do you teach other subjects besides music? Well, yes and no. At my school, the first year or two, I was required to also teach reading. And not reading music, like reading words. That was also a very interesting and inspiring position to be in. Teaching kids words. Like, they don't know the word house or school, and you are the person that's teaching them how to read that word. So I did have to teach English, sort of. All right, what does a perfect day look like? That's a very broad question. A perfect day. I feel like it's a miscongeniality question. What is that, April 25th? Or not too hot, not too cold. All you need is a light jacket. Well, a perfect day would probably include, obviously, some ukulele. Music, collaboration at any rate. Making music with another person. A perfect day for me would include no alarm clocks, eating delicious food only to the point of satisfaction and not to the point of gorging yourself and feeling gross. A perfect day would look like, I would say as far as the weather is concerned, late November here in Florida or like a September in Ohio. September in Ohio, it's like you're literally breathing in the cleanest air. Like crisp, but it's not humid. The sun's out, but you're not roasting. So there, weather-wise, we're gonna go September in Ohio. Other than that, I would say a perfect day would also include a nap, which I don't ever really get to do or even choose to do because it just totally ruins the circadian rhythm. And I think a perfect day would have to include spectating some kind of performance. A concert, or a play, or a Broadway show, or a great movie, some sort of consumption of art. That's definitely in a perfect day. And great conversation. Talking to either someone you love about something interesting or talking to someone that you don't know about something that they have experienced or learning about something that you've never learned about. So if you had all those things in one day, I think the day would be like 87 hours long, but that would be a perfect day for me. Okay. What's the best book you've read? You guys, I'm not a good reader. I love reading, but I am really terrible at actually doing it. I got good for about 6 weeks this year and read a little bit every single night, and I would have to even think about books I've finished. I will say the book I have read the most is, another nerd alert, is Hamlet. I love me some Shakespeare. I've read Hamlet probably at least 3 times, maybe 4. But I feel like there's other really great books that I've read. Actually, you know what? I have one of those apps. I have one of those reading apps. I used to keep track of the books that I've read. So let's see. What have I read? You guys, I've only read 56 books. That's not good at all. And one of them is 50 Shades of Grey. Oh man. When She Woke. That's a really great book. With The Handmaid's Tale, which is also one of my favorite books, how have they not made When She Woke into a series or a movie or something? If you haven't read When She Woke by Hilary Jordan, take a gander. Let's see what else. I really love Stephen King. I think Carrie and Misery were 2 of my faves. What else? Lord of the Flies, always a favorite. Sybil. You know, I read Sybil. It was, I will say, one of the most mind-blowing books that I've ever read. It's about multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. Yeah. And you know, I might actually make an entire video on one of these books, which is Who Moved My Cheese? And I know what you're thinking, that it's like total cornball of a book. It sounds very silly. And the premise is very simple, and it's like this big. It took like an afternoon to read the entire thing. But I would say Who Moved My Cheese was probably the most impactful book on my actual life. I might actually make an entire video about that book. All right, we're closing in on the last couple here. Hang in there. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? That has gotta be one of the hardest questions because I love food so much. I am tempted to say that the answer to that question is probably nachos. I look forward to eating nachos the way a dog looks forward to its meal every time. Like, there's never any kind of apathy with a dog and its meal. It's always so excited as though it's its first meal ever. That's me and nachos. Any kind. Movie nachos, full-on pilot to the sky Mexican style nachos, DIY nachos at home, just melt that cheese in the microwave. Any kind of nachos. I think it's the right answer. For anyone, I think that's the right answer. Not just for me. You get so many flavors. You get so much substance. You could pick it apart and eat it with a fork. You can use the chips. You can crumble them up. The possibilities with nachos are endless. So that is my answer. Last question. Are those your real glasses? Yes. I get this question not only from people online, but in like the real world. But I think even in the real world, it's pretty easy to see that these are the real deal. Like, if I do this, my eyes get very tiny because these lenses are very thick. I am real not good at seeing without glasses. Yeah, if I didn't have these on, not only do I think I might actually look a little cross-eyed, I don't think I'm actually cross-eyed, but I think that's kind of something that happens when people take their glasses off. But yeah, I walk into walls and things. So these are absolutely real. I can't drive without them. I can't read music without them. But then also I can't see things close up sometimes. That's why I'm like doing this with the iPad. When I have my phone, you guys, when I have my phone, my students always make fun of me because even though I have these on, I'm doing this number, looking at my phone, because I still can't see anything. So, those are my almost 20 questions. I am shocked and amazed that this took so long. I think I'm going on like an hour of filming at this point. Somehow I gotta whittle this down to something that is easier to consume. Yeah, thank you so much for those of you that submitted questions. I hope I answered most pressing issues on your mind. If you have other questions, put them in the comments and I will put them either on the next video or on a future frequently asked questions video. If you like hearing my answers to the questions, learning a little bit more about yours truly, then please give me a thumbs up. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button over here. So, until the next one, have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one. It's time for outros and thank yous for watching. Now please like and subscribe. Please validate my existence by coming